and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, all right, so in roll call, we'll start with Alexa. Is here?
Alexa.
Juli.
Andrea Tuttle. Diane Karabetsos.
Nugent.
Sierra Donovan.
Marcus Ambrozy.
Kate Hopper. Jodie Randazzo.
Coutilish. Sean Donovan. For Stanley.
Okay. Can someone make a motion to approve the agenda
With 2 changes.
with 2 changes? We're going to move 3.3 to 3.1, and then we are, for the new business Collins and Blaha presentation will be at the May 28th meeting at 6:30.
And that's going to be given by Dr. Tuttle.
Oh,
Basically what we're about to see.
Yeah, it's a little bit about it. It's the do's and don'ts of campaign finance stuff, so I'm going to talk about that today a little bit. So.
Motion. Say no more, you're kind of good.
Motion.
Motion.
Second.
Okay, sorry.
Good to go?
Yeah.
All right, well, thank you for having me here. I've met most of you, but for those of you who don't know, I'm Andrea Tuttle. I'm fortunate to be the new superintendent of Grosse Pointe. And this evening, I'm going to be providing a presentation regarding the millage elections that are coming up in August and then subsequently in November. I'm going to ask you, I have about a 45-minute presentation. Having given this presentation last night to the facilities and finance, what I found was people were asking questions kind of as we go, which you're welcome to do, but sometimes it's already in a slide somewhere, so perhaps you could write down your questions and see if I didn't answer it, and then we'll come back to it. But either way, that works for me. So just so you know, I want to start with the why, actually. Well, no, I guess I'll start with the agenda. So today we're going to go over the operating millage, which is very different from a sinking fund millage, and I'm going to explain the differences between the two. I'm also going to chat a little bit about what the difference between bond debt and sinking fund debt. I don't want to demean anyone's intelligence, for those of you who know, but I'm going to chat a little bit about that. I'm going to review a 10-year capital plan that was developed in 2022. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. As Trustee Jeup just said, I'm going to talk a little, very briefly, about campaign finance do's and don'ts, and then we'll have a Q&A. But I'm going to start with the why millages in general, and I'm not going to read every slide to you, but I am going to read this particular slide to you. First, the font's kind of small, but public schools play a critical role in the social, economic, and cultural vitality of a community, making them an integral part of its fabric. As such, it is important for school leaders, such as me and our Board of Education, to inform the community about ways to sustain and enhance these valuable assets. In Michigan, the responsibility for addressing capital needs often falls to local taxpayers through school district millages. And I say in Michigan because other states provide funds specifically for capital projects. Michigan does not. Specifically in Grosse Pointe, tradition costs money. We have an amazing school district here. So maintaining traditions and operating stately facilities can be quite costly. The upkeep of these prestigious sites often involves significant financial investment due to the need for regular maintenance, updates to comply with modern standards, and the inherent inefficiencies compared to newer, more advanced facilities. Additionally, the commitment to preserving traditional practices may also entail expenses that more contemporary methods might mitigate. However, these facilities and traditions are what set Grosse Pointe apart. It makes us the special place that we are, and highlighting its unique charm and historical significance, which I think we all appreciate. Grosse Pointe is one of those rare places that draws generation upon generation back to raise their own children in a community where schools have continued traditions while keeping up with the times. How many of you are life GPers or generational GPers? Several of you, so you can appreciate. That doesn't happen everywhere, it's not the norm. So the purpose of today's presentation is to inform, to educate, and to provide clarity on the upcoming millages, and then also to answer any questions that you may have. Again, many of you probably already know this, but for the sake of conversation, a mill is a tax unit equal to $1 per $1,000 in taxable value. I'll talk a little bit about that later. Property cash value is the established value of a property. State equalized value, the SEV, is roughly 50% of a property's true cash value, also known as taxable value. Homestead property is a property that a taxpayer would classify as their primary residence, not a vacation home. Non-homestead property, property that is not a primary residence, typically commercial or vacation homes. And a foundation allowance is after Prop A with Governor Engler, a pupil amount that the state authorizes, and they are the primary funds for school operations. Just to give you some context, and I think this is important, and perhaps you know this, but the basic foundation for the majority of schools in the state of Michigan is about $9,600, and they call those, that's the basic foundation. Back when Governor Engler did Prop A, or the voters, there were several school districts, Grosse Pointe being one of them, that said, that's not really fair because we pay a little bit more in taxes. And so there was what we called the 20J schools. And so we, through our hold harmless amount, actually collect about $11,300 per student. And there are several districts, I shouldn't say several, there are a few like us. The operating millage overview. So the definition of operating millage, and I'm going to stick strictly with the operating millage, and then I'll delineate the two in a moment, that being sinking fund. But the definition, an operating millage is a tax levied on properties to fund the daily operations of the school districts. Pay for your staff, pay for books, pay for equipment, pay for furniture, whatever the case may be. And I'm going to tell you how sinking fund in a minute is different. This operating millage that's being proposed for the August election is a renewal. It is not a new tax. It levies up to 18 mills on non-homestead properties, which is inclusive of commercial and rental properties. And it levies up to 7.5 mills on homestead properties, which are residential homes. The financial impact is $22 million. To give you an example, Grosse Pointe revenue is roughly, with grants included, and that's a complicated formula, approximately $100 million. So roughly a fourth of our revenue comes from this, and the state assumes we are collecting this, and if we don't, we lose that $22 million. Operating millage, continuation of funding, ensures that Grosse Pointe can maintain its current operations without interruptions. No tax increase for homeowners, and it supports our programs. Program staffing resources, as I said. I'm not going to go through all this because this will all be eventually, it's going to be presented on next Tuesday to the community at our board meeting. It will also then subsequently be put on our website so people can go through this. But will you open that FAQ? Yeah. Just to show, I'm not going to go through all those questions. I've answered a lot of them already, but there will be an FAQ for voters. What is being requested? Will this increase the property tax? What are the revenues? Can't read as fast as Chris can scroll, but you can get the idea of the Q&As. So that'll be available for you. All right, will you take me out of this?
Yep.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, you're good. I'm glad you're good. Okay. Then there's going to be a letter from the superintendent that I'm still working on. There will be website information and social media information. At the end of this presentation, there's an action plan that I will be showing you as well, moving forward. But I do want to point out that this will be August 6th is the election date for the operating millage. Sinking fund will not be until November 5th. Oops, did I do that? Okay. Here's, no, you're good. How do you go through this? Ballot language? The ballot language, oh, here, scroll down. That's that. It's right for you. I'm not going to did you bring copies of this by chance?
We'll print some out, I apologize.
That's okay. So we'll have a printed copy of this for you. But this proposal would reauthorize the Grosse Pointe Public School System to levy up to the statutory limit of 18 mills for general school district operating purposes on taxable property. I'm not going to go through all of this with you. I just talked about that, the 3.57 I talked about. Hi. I'm glad you're here. And I also talked about this $22 million that it will levy in the first year. Okay, and this is going to be for 5 years. That's the request. I'm going to stop for a minute. Any questions about the ballot language? We can scroll down just a little bit. Or scroll so they can see it up, I guess. And you'll have that printed copy that you can look at. I'm going to point out that it asks for 20 mills. This is so that when you have a Headley rollback, Anyone familiar with what a Headley rollback is? A little bit. So it protects when the taxable value increases above the rate of inflation, you get rolled back. The state assumes you're collecting a full 18 mills. If you don't, you lose money from the state. And so this cushion of 20 mills allows a rollback to happen, like a 0.5 rollback, taking it back to 19.5, but you can never collect more than 18. It's kind of a nuanced thing, but so it gives the cushion of 2 mills to be rolled back and still be able to collect what we need to collect to maintain the full state aid payments per student, which equates to the $22 million. Any questions on that? That's a little. All right, so we're going to do questions and comments. The operating millage is actually the easier of the two to explain. It's pretty straightforward. Every school in the state of Michigan has to do this. You've seen them all over. I believe there was numerous ones at the last election they typically pass because people understand the ramifications if they don't pass to a school district. So I'm going to stop right there for questions regarding specifically the operating millage.
So it's 5 years, because I heard something else that it's going to be 10 years.
That's the sinking fund, so I'll get to that in a minute. Yep, great question though. Other questions? Going once? What?
It's an easy crowd.
I guess it's an easy crowd, yeah. All right, and you can ask if you think of some as we come up, please share, because as you hear the sinking fund, you may think, what's the difference between the two? All right, so sinking fund, the definition is a millage is a tax levied specifically for building and site improvements, not for general operation expenses. So let me kind of explain the difference. When sinking funds came into fruition, they could be utilized for purposes of, and I'm going to give you just a visual for the visual learners, but if you were to cut off a roof to a building and turn the building over and shake it out, anything that fell out of the building could not be used for sinking funds. They could be used with the operating millage, but what would fall out? You would fall out. This would fall out. The microwave would fall out. The furniture would fall out. What wouldn't fall out? The windows, the floors, the roof if we didn't cut it off. Inside, hi, how are you? Thanks for being here. Inside cabinets don't fall out. Cameras fall out. Equipment falls out. So there are very specific uses of sinking fund dollars, and that's how they differ from operating dollars. Does that make sense? I do want to share the difference between a bond and a sinking fund. So we have an operational millage, bonds, and a sinking fund. A bond is like if you mortgaged your house. You go buy a house, you have to get a loan, you pay interest, and you pay it off over a period of time. A sinking fund is you collect $50 every year, you spend $50 every year. So a bond is a form of borrowing. Taxpayers must pay back the borrowed funds over a period of years with interest. Conversely, a sinking fund is levied but are not borrowed. This means the funds generated do not include borrowing additional debt or incurring interest. Okay, you get to spend what you bring in. Key details of this. The proposed to levy is 3 mills. I'm going to explain this further. Mathematically, I'm going to show you some examples, but $3 per $1,000 of taxable value, and I have some examples of that. If you have neighbors, I need you to help educate, so please make sure you understand that. And to your point, the duration is 10 years, so from 25 to 34. Specifically, the use of the funds: construction, repair of buildings, site improvements, school security, which is huge. So what I failed to say, should be back when I gave my example, is since the original concept of sinking funds, the next legislation added technology to it. So our current sinking fund millage allows us to use technology upgrades. When this one passes, hopefully, it'll allow us to use those for transportation vehicles as well. So they keep adding legislatively more uses of the sinking fund. When it first initiated, you couldn't use it for transportation and you couldn't use it for technology, which bummed Chris out, right? Any questions on that? All right. This is just really reiterates you can use them for facility improvements, enhanced security, which is a big use, clean and dry buildings, technology upgrades. The revenue generated is expected to generate approximately $10.2 million in the first year. So 1 mil on primary residence properties in Grosse Pointe generates roughly $3.4 million. Okay, so that's 1 mil. You multiply that by 3, you get approximately 10.2. And actually, if this passes, it'll be more because the taxable value has increased, and it's all based on taxable value. So it's more like 11 mils moving forward. There's accountability, as there is with anything. Funds will be audited annually to ensure transparency and proper usage. And again, and I reiterate, and I need your help with this because people, this is a misconception, it cannot be used for salaries or general operating expenses. Okay? So I just want to clarify that over and over. All right, here's the example mathematically. If you had a friend that asked you approximately how much it's going to cost, I'm going to stand on this side. If you were to sell your house today, I'm just going to take a middle one, and you could sell it for $500,000. Okay? Roughly, your taxable value is approximately half of what you could sell your house for. So your taxable value is $250,000. You divide $250,000 by 1,000. Everybody knows that means you cut off the last 3 zeros, and you get $250,000. You know how to do that cheating measure, but that worked for me in school. So that's 1 mil, and you multiply it to get your product of $750,000. So that's what a person with a house that they could sell for $500,000 every year at 3 mils would pay $750,000. I'm just going to use one more example. Let's go to the $1 million house. So the $1 million house, half of it, $500,000, divided by 1,000 because it's $1 every $1,000 of taxable value. $500 multiplied by 3, $1,500. Make sense? Here's some people in the audience, but. So that's how you can help us educate. Now it's not absolutely precise, and I suspect that we will have a calculator for people to go to precisely identify, but that gives you a real close estimate of what you're paying. That's you. You printed the operating. You're working on it?
Yeah, I was
Okay.
gonna wait until we got both of these.
Yep, perfect. Scroll just so I can see all of the language. Thank you. So this is what you'll see when you go to the polls. This proposal allows the use of proceeds of sinking fund millage for all purposes previously authorized by the voters, as well as the acquisition of student transportation vehicles. So that's the added component. Trucks and vans and parts, supplies and equipment for these vehicles now permitted by state law. Pursuant to state law, the expenditure of the building and site sinking fund millage proceeds will be audited, yada, yada, yada. I don't need to read this all to you. But as I said, a mill would generate more because the whoops, I can't touch that, I forgot about that. Do not touch. Would actually generate about 11 million. Because the mill would be a little bit more now than what the current one is because taxable value has increased.
And that transportation is a very new thing as well.
It's a very new thing, yep. That's the added component.
And it would take about, I don't know, about 1.3 million?
Out of the general fund.
Right.
Yeah, it's about
Pressure off the
1.6 million that we have in the general fund for transportation, and you might say, how is that possible? We don't, we're not a bus to school district. But we utilize a lot of transportation costs for our special needs program. So when you see Grosse Pointe Public Schools buses, it's actually Auxilio, who we contract with. For their buses, they put Grosse Pointe Schools on the side of them. And additionally, all the buses that are used for extracurricular activities. So kids going to football, basketball, lacrosse, whatever the case may be. So if this passed, you could, not to say you had to, but you could use funds from sinking fund for those types of things and free up some more funds in the general fund to go back to kids and resources in the classroom. Oops. Okay. Oops. All right. I'm not going to read all of these to you, other than to say in summary, these, I'm going to go to do-do-dos first. In summary, I'm just going to say this really quickly. You can go and read these at your leisure, but basically, if you are a school employee, which is inclusive of board members when they're acting as board members, you may not advocate on which way to vote. So I cannot say vote no, I cannot say vote yes. With using any kind of district resource, which is inclusive of by time, It's inclusive of technology, paper, pens, mailings. I cannot use any of that, and nor could any school employee during school time if I'm going to advocate. What I can do is educate. So I can do exactly what I've done here. I can tell you what it's used for. I can tell you what we plan to use it for. To show you in a minute. Now, we haven't decided that yet, but that's part of our next steps. You, as community members, can do whatever you want. On your social media, signs, you have no do's and don'ts. You can't get in trouble like a school employee can for doing something that advocates in any regard. That's a big one. So we need your help to help educate, and then hopefully you can get friends and educate your friends, and they can educate friends. Like I say, it's kind of the Amway effect. Alexa has 10 friends. I know you have more, but you pick your 10 friends. Julie, right? Julie has her 10 friends. I didn't meet you when you came in. Well, so let's say they each have 10 friends on a list, and arguably those 10 friends then would go and educate each of their 10 friends, and that's how it grows. I call it the Amway effect. And in theory, we'd hope that we'd be someone in the community could kind of organize that so that if Ginny's on all 3 lists, she doesn't get phone calls to educate her 3 times. So people would cross-reference so that Ginny's only on one person's list, and then Julie's going to have to find another friend to back Ginny, who she doesn't get to have. So,
Is this a renewal?
pardon?
Is this a
The sinking fund, we are currently paying 1 mil, so this would be 3 mils. Yep. So part renewal, part. Question. That's a good question. Other questions?
Is the 1 mil sinking fund, does it actually expire this year?
So that's a really good question as well. We collect, school districts collect in December. So we have 1 more collection for the current sinking fund. The election is for the sinking fund is in November. And then I'm going to continue on this path because if it doesn't pass in November, right, the district actually can go in May, August, or November of 2025 and not skip a sinking fund collection levy. Does that make sense?
What do you mean you can go in May?
I'm sorry, we
You
could
can
go out to the elections again.
Put it on another ballot.
A ballot, yes, thank you for that clarification.
Yeah, because I'm worried, like, what if people support a sinking fund, but not necessarily up to 3 mil? It's like, it seems like it's an all or nothing
It is an element.
until May, I guess.
Yep, and I'm going to show you right now, I'm going to show you in a minute the needs of the district because as
We have to,
Yeah.
for sure. So,
yeah, 252 million as identified in 2022.
I'm just thinking about what people are.
Totally understand, yep. And I appreciate the question so that you can help us.
Andrea, is there a marketing communications committee that's separate from a campaign committee to help facilitate this and create a marketing communication plan?
We're working on that. So I'm going to be blunt, we're a little behind the 8 ball, right? Because we should have probably started talking about this earlier next year because I'm going to tell you that I'm going to switch gears to the operating for a minute, but that's in August. Absentee ballots come out for that in the 3rd week of June. We're almost at the end of May. So we need to get information regarding the operating millage to the absentee voters prior to that. And to your point, we have a lot of work to do.
So the reason I bring it up is in a past lifetime, I led a similar effort at Oakland Community College, a renewal of a millage, and we started a year in advance. I had a marketing communication plan, I had a company that had messaging, I had this whole huge plan, 40, 50 pages. And
Can you do that in 2 weeks for us?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'll get it right now. Brand's gonna help me.
Thank you.
So if you want help.
I love to hear that, thank you.
Did it pass?
Thank you, Ted, I appreciate that.
It passed.
Are you deciding whether we're gonna?
There's a caveat, it was a renewal. This is 3 times, this decision sign is 3 times the mill. And so it was in Oakland County, which is very conservative and very difficult to pass villages, but it was a renewal. And so it overwhelmingly passed, but again, apples to apples.
Yeah, and I'm going to share why, you can ask to levy up to 3 mills, and I'm going to show in a minute why this district really, if we're going to maintain, as I indicated, these aging facilities, it's very difficult to do.
Yeah, so if I could say one more thing.
Yes.
The need is there, we get that.
Yep.
It's the messaging, the explanation, clear,
sure.
concise, and dispelling the rumors, myths, and those stuff.
100%. And I'm just going to give you a little background about myself. This isn't my first rodeo with thinking funds or operating. I've been doing this for 14 years. I think I have 16 elections in various capacities. So I completely understand that. But to Ted's point, it's a full-time job educating, right? It really is. It is a full-time job trying to educate people. And I always say, as long as people are educated, you know, I can't say if I support this or not. I think by recommending that it be to the board, I think you probably know how I feel, but I can't say that. But the messaging is, to your point, so important, and people have to want to be educated, have to want to read the material, and have to come to sessions like this, and not just say no, right? If you're educated and you say no, okay. But please take the moment to educate yourself and know what you're voting on. So again, there's 3 slides to that, or I guess 2. Do you understand the difference between what you can do and I can do? You can do whatever you want. All right. So again, I'm not going to read that. So to Ted's point, and there's some redundancy in this, I'll be honest, I put this together kind of in a 5-minute, having gone through these before, so there is a little bit of redundancy. There's 12 things for our next step. And Ted and others, I would absolutely welcome your thoughts on other things that we can do, or perhaps you can help us. So let me get through all 12, and then if you think we're missing a key component, please let us know. First and foremost, we need to go through a project identification. Identify key projects that will benefit from the sinking fund revenue. I shared with you in the last presentation, we had that 2022. Do we still have that? So
The capital needs?
Yeah, can you show that for a minute? I think we...
Absolutely.
Okay, so I do want to show, this is a how many page document?
197.
So I'm going to go through them quickly. I'm kidding, I'm not going through all these pages. You can take a breath. I'm going to show you 2 though that are important. So the first one is Plant Moran in 2022. So some of the things on the list, perhaps 5 million, I'm just throwing out a number, have been completed. But here's the bottom line of needs for our entire district, 252 million. This is the audit, so this isn't something that we just came up with. This was done by professionals who took every building in our district, identified critical needs, which are needs that should be accomplished for safety and security or for other reasons in 1 to 3 years, deferrable maintenance, and property enhancement, and then complete costs with escalation because, as you know, inflation escalates every year. You don't do something, it costs more the next year, and came to a sum total of $252,568,875. Now I'm going to break that down to one specific building. So can you show me Monteith, or which, I don't care what building you show me. Again, I'm not going to go through all of these. We need to clean up this document because some of these were completed with the bond, but like I said, out of 252 million, we may have completed 5. But you can see it's delineated into plumbing systems for Monteith, HVAC systems, electrical, abatement, which is a huge one in an aging district. Lots of asbestos. So we have to go through, and by we, I mean our maintenance and grounds department, in consultation with Plant Moran and the board, and decide so that we can tell the voters exactly what, if this passes, we will be spending money on. But I'm going to tell you it's going to be windows, parking lots, roofs for the most part. Yesterday, Ben Madison was here, and he's our buildings and grounds director. And he was just talking about, in some buildings he can literally put his finger through some of the window, not the windows themselves, but the wood frames. But safety and security is huge. Technology is huge. And Chris, can you just chime in for a minute about technology?
Yeah, absolutely. So I just want to be clear, when we're talking about technology here, we're not having a conversation about the wouldn't it be nice to have sort of thing. I'll give you a perfect example. Right now, the College Board now has switched their entire testing system over to a digital test. So what that requires school districts is that we need school-managed devices in order for these tests to occur. It's no longer taking the SAT on paper and pencil anymore. You need readied, updated devices available so that students can take that. We're able to do that right now because of a lot of that bond work that was in there, but even with that, this was before that College Board made that change. So we're doing a lot of shuffling as it goes along, right? North has to borrow from South, South has to borrow from North. We're able to make it work, but you do need upgraded technology in order to continue to focus on those things. So those are the areas that we're looking at when it comes to the technology component.
And I mean, and then you have technology such as this and sound systems,
Yep.
and security with the sinking fund. Security is huge to ensure that that's number one for me, making sure that our kids and our team members are safe. Thank you.
Yes, sure.
Thank you.
So can I ask a question
Yeah.
for you, Mom?
Yes.
And I know that people that I spend time with are gonna ask this as well. I was under the impression some of these things were supposed to happen with the bond money. Is that, are we done with spending the bond money? I know it was a period of time, but I remember security was a big thing.
Yep, and there were a lot of things with security. So this whole document, as I said, it was from 2022. So we need to clean up the document. But even if we take all the things off that were done with the bond work, I don't know what that equates to, but let's say it's 25 million. We're still sitting at $225 million in needs moving forward.
But these issues are all separate from what the bond was.
No, not necessarily. There might be, let me give you an example. North parking lot is going to be worked on this, North High School parking lot this summer. I suspect that's on the list. Don't know definitively, so that would be taken off the list. That's not something. So we're going to clean up the list, and then from the remaining items on there, with consultation of, like I said, our buildings and grounds department, who know these facilities really well, as well as Plant Moran, who knows, has been working with us, we will say, okay, we have roughly $11 million to spend if this passes every year. A parking lot itself can cost $2 million. I mean, you can eat up one parking lot, 11 million very quickly. So we're hoping, not hoping, we are going to have, before we go out to the voters, remember this is November, so we have a little bit of time. Conversely, we don't have a lot of time for the operating. I mean, it's all relative, right? None of it's a year, but we want to show, A, what we've already accomplished with sinking fund, what's been done, so voters can know. And so we're hoping to have boards in front of every school to say, defer. These were the things that have been accomplished and defer a loan using sinking fund dollars. And we do that for all the buildings, so people know what our previous monies have been used for. Then moving forward, we want to plan, like a strategic plan of, in the next 5 years. Year one, we're going to work on this parking lot, Monteith roof, I'm making stuff up, right? Monteith roof and, 2 boilers, something to that effect. And so there's so many things to try to knock off that list, but we hope to get that out to the voters as well.
Are you gonna share what the bond already did as well?
Yes, that's
That would matter to me.
Yes.
Because I just approved a big bond.
So
Yep.
just to add to that, Julie, because I know that question comes up. If you recall back in 2017 when it was decided what is the amount that we want to go for with the bond, I believe it was identified about $197 million at the time. The district decided to go for a $112 million bond. And I share that just because of the fact that I think we still knew, even on top of the $112 million, there were still some things that we needed to focus on, right? Like we weren't able to cover it all at that point. So with the work of the bond, we were able to enhance a ton of securities out there. We were able to, enhance the lighting in certain rooms and fix the things that were the big needs out there. But the clock continues to tick, right? So I can just always kind of speak more so from the technology standpoint. This is a 10-year focus that we're taking a look at, and the clock starts to tick once you install some of those things that are out there. So what does it look like to, 6 years down the line when I do need to, purchase new access points that are out there, or 8 years from now these things go kaput? What is it? Where is an area that might be able to help us to be able to plan for those things appropriately?
And I think people in the community support these things for the most part, but for me personally, understanding exactly, I did a bond here that we paid for, what did that accomplish? Versus what, and I think it's important to share that, at home, if I want something, I always ask my husband for that plus, because I know it's gonna get cut back. Well, that's kind of what you did, right? You cut it back a little bit. So, tell people that. We really needed this much, but this is what we got, and there were some things left over. Because just in the casual conversations we've had recently within, neighbors and so forth, especially people that don't have kids in the district, like, didn't we just do a bond? And it was a big number. People remember, they won't remember the number, but they'll remember it was big. So I just think it's important to share what the bond has already done versus what's left.
And so to your point, you're exactly right. We met with Plant Moran today, and they're getting us that historically. The bond in 2020 accomplished X, 2021, so we'll have that list in addition to what the sinking fund has done. So you're absolutely right. And I just want to go back to the why at the very beginning. It costs a lot of money to maintain stately facilities, and that is, in my opinion, I think that's why a lot of us come to Grosse Pointe and stay in Grosse Pointe. The beauty of the facilities, the walk to schools, because a lot of communities are tearing down the old and building, buildings that don't have, perhaps, in my opinion, a lot of character, and they're not walk to school, and they might have one elementary for the whole community. So it does, to your point, it costs a lot of money to maintain and repair. And I always say, sometimes people say, well, where did my money go? I didn't see any of it. Well, there are two kinds of projects. There's the shiny ones that everyone sees. You see the parking lot. You can tell that something's been done. But how much money goes under the tunnels of these buildings for plumbing that nobody sees? And so that's, to your point, why it's so important that we tell the story of, you didn't see it, but that costs a ton of money. I'm just going to give you an example from when I was in Owasso. We had a very aging facility. Beautiful, but the plumbing was in the ceiling encapsulated in 6 feet of concrete. To get to that was millions upon millions of dollars. So it was decided, we're done with the building, we got to build new. So it's just that balance of what do you want in a community. But yes, we will have all of that in a short period of time with Ted's help. All right. Thank you, Jen. All right. Good question. Other questions on that one? Yes. I think we'll get to community comments in a minute, but this is just for the community. No, you're good. Go ahead.
No, I heard some rumblings of businesses about the bonds. I wonder if anybody else,
About the bond itself?
about the 10-year and just the cost for businesses in Grosse Pointe.
Well, I'm going to tell you, if you ideally you want 18 mils continually. So whether you go for 5 years and then ask for 18 mils again, I'm going to say it again. The state assumes you're collecting. Are you leaving me?
I'm screening.
Okay. I'll just add your name to the list. So I think the board decided rather than keeping coming back to the voters, it's going to be 18 mils every time. You might as well just go for the extended period of time on the operating millage. And that's what I believe your business funds are saying. Yes. And I also want to point out, which is getting into the weeds a little bit, that 18 mils is based on a very different taxable value than the personal property tax stuff. Okay? So let me continue with this. So we need to identify. We need to identify what we've done and what we're going to do. Second, community education, which is kind of what we're doing, take the show on the road. And I said it can't just be me. We need to get to everybody. Rotary, Kiwanis, PTOs, and educate. So we need a team of people who feel comfortable standing up here, understanding this, and then can give this presentation to others and answer the questions appropriately. Or if you don't know them, just ask. And absentee ballots, I already referenced. When I presented this to the last group, they said we need to divide these. What needs to be done for operational versus sinking fund? Because some of these right now, our focus is on the operational. So we need to get these out to the absentee ballot for the operational information by the 3rd week of June. Literature distribution, ultimately we're going to send to all voters, probably not in June because they won't be voting until August, so probably closer, to mid-July. To your point, we need to showcase our past achievements, highlight how funds have been successfully used in the past to build trust and demonstrate effectiveness. This is fund utilization, that's kind of redundant. Social media engagement, we have a wonderful communication director, and Ted, who's going to help with the social media engagement, maintain an active social media presence to reach a broader audience. Number 8, community presentations, as I just said. As many as we can do so people are educated. Ballot language is oftentimes hard, so it's better that people can be educated and ask the questions. The school board displays, which I already kind of talked about, those are those individual displays that I referenced. I also talked a little bit about a database activation, which is simply, and this, sometimes in my experiences, PACs get together and do this part, database, so that they can educate people, community letters. We hope that people will send out letters to help educate, and then of course on the day of the election, it's getting people out to vote. So those are kind of the 12, really 11 because one was redundant, things that we need to do before we give this presentation to the public at the board meeting on the 28th. And I remind you, board meetings are meetings of the board held in public. They're not public meetings, so I'll be talking to the board, but the public will be able to see all of this as well. But before I do that, I will delineate specifically what needs to be done for the operating versus the sinking fund. Any questions on that? Thoughts? A lot to do in a little bit of time. Yes, Ted, did you question?
No, go ahead.
So, good start.
Yeah.
The three things I think are going to be most important is the social media engagement, the what do you call it, community presentations, and what's not up there are the videos, which I think would be really helpful. Photos and videos to have content to have on social media, PowerPoint, to make the case. You do a really good job of presenting with good energy. We would want others like you who are well informed with your energy and your background and skills to be able to stand up there and share this in all those places that you said. The other thing that I think is important is to spend money, which I'm not saying here, but not to look like you're spending money. So no cheapy commercials, radio commercials, billboards, anything that looks like, why would we give you money if you're just wasting it on advertisement? But there should be some additional funding here that we can get into at a later time, that do some additional things that I think won't cost a lot, but would really help. I just saw that Grosse Pointe North and Grosse Pointe South video teams won awards in our newsletter. That could be a possibility that you tap into them to create the videos.
You know, Ted, as you were talking, I was just thinking, even taping myself giving this presentation might be a good idea. So that's something I hadn't thought about, but that's a great idea as well.
A condensed version.
Pardon?
A condensed version.
I know, but I need help with that,
Yes.
because I always say if you don't educate people, they fill in the blanks, and sometimes those blanks aren't correct.
Yeah.
So you
So
have
the
to
idea
be,
is to pique the interest, but not explain every little detail.
and then send them to a.
And then you have the details and other things, website, letters that you have, brochure, all that other stuff has the details. You're giving the 20,000 version in a video, and then they can get all the details and other things. But your passion and your energy will really help with this effort.
And you make it really easy to understand. Very.
Yeah, I
And
was,
you did a shorter version of this at the last board meeting, the one before last.
I did a little bit just showing the boards what I was kind of educating the board what choices they need to make. Was it 3 mills, was it how many years, and so forth. But of course, I think board members know a little bit more sometimes than the general public, especially if they've been through it before, but for sure, thank you.
But that was very educational. Yeah, that was a shorter
More concise version.
version.
I was gonna say that, yeah, if there were 10 of you explaining it, that would be great. The video might be the best way to do that. Is there any sense, as you're going through this, and I think everybody, I don't want to speak for everybody, but it seems like the schools definitely need this money. Is there any sense of what we're up against? What the community may feel of this? Do they feel this is coming? Do they know this is coming? Is this, do we have a general sense of how this will be received?
I think it's gonna be hard. Every family's feeling the pinch, and it's a lot of money.
That's just my question, you know.
I don't know the community
yeah,
well enough.
yeah.
All I will say to that is a couple of things. What you get, what you pay for, right? So it depends what you want. And typically your public schools are the fabric and drive a community, so you want them to be as.
And we are.
I think you're 100% correct in all this.
I know,
and
just
totally
I'm
agree.
preaching to
Just
the choir.
how
I
do you preach to
understand.
the choir? How,
But we are a well-educated
Yeah,
community, so
right.
to your point,
Right.
the better we can educate people, the more likely we're gonna pass it.
Yeah, and I appreciate that this community wants to be educated.
Mhm.
You know,
I think
sometimes
it
people are
does.
just like, I don't care what you have to say.
I think the school board displays, savvy school board displays are really important too, because that's something parents are gonna see every day when they're going in and out of the schools. And it's a quick way to get, if they're done right, to get the most important points across to people. Subliminally, they'll just see it every time they walk in and out.
Other thoughts or questions? I think we're kind of at the end. So, or ways that you want to.
you hit 45 minutes.
I know.
That was great.
I think it was an hour last night. So.
Is this presentation, until Ted has it all packaged perfectly, is this available to us?
It's not right now.
Okay.
So we threw it out last night to the Finance and Facilities Committee, who gave us some suggestions that changed today's presentation a little bit. But as I indicated, one thing that we didn't do, just time didn't allow us between yesterday and today, was delineate action items for the operating millage versus sinking funds. But eventually, after I present it on the 28th, it is my hope that any community member could go and look at that. And perhaps it's preceded by a little video, like a 3 minute, 3 minutes the time frame, right? That people will watch for 3 minutes and then they're done. of me doing, and maybe you can help me with that and what your thoughts are.
Also photos, so you mentioned,
Yes.
you know, the windowsills, pictures and stuff. All of the worst case scenarios you want to photograph, and even videotape at some point. Because it's great, but I'm a visual person, and I didn't see, you didn't hit me with the
Totally.
visuals, like, why, you know.
Yeah.
I can't see the parking lot, so.
And your point is very well taken. I, being a little bit new, I'm trying to figure out where all those pictures are so that we can capture them. We take them, yes, yes. I'm thinking Rand has some, Ben has some, so we have a lot of work ahead of us, so.
I think it's important to show pictures of what you've done too.
Absolutely.
You know, I have one kid in high school, there's 10 schools I've never set foot in the
Right.
last 5 years.
Exactly.
So show me the vestibules at the elementary
Yep.
schools, you know, that are redone for safety and the playground enhanced, whatever. You know,
I'm hoping that we have before and after pictures, ideally that's what we seek.
Other than mail, what's the plan to reach people without students?
That's a really good question. So the August one is a little bit, the operating millage is a little bit harder because as I've shared with the board, and I'm glad that we did what we did, but people are on vacation and kind of checked out in the summer. So that's why on election day, I really need people to help call those 10 people, you know, hey, don't forget to vote, don't forget to vote. But social media is huge, obviously, the website. I always say, and I know this sounds super corny, and I'm not saying I'm going to do this, Alexa's going to love this, but a bump in the envelope always makes people open something. So whether it's a postcard last night, they said just send a postcard, and postcards to me kind of get, and I'm open to suggestions, but I always like to put a pen or something in there, like a Grosse Pointe pen, but to your point, you don't want to spend a lot of money, right? So that's that balance. Maybe it's a Grosse Pointe car sticker, but that's not really a bump. And an envelope so people at least open that. So mail, social media, on our website, papers, newspapers, obviously, letters to the editor, if any of you feel compelled to write that. Help me, anything else? If you have suggestions,
Well, I just know that most of the ways I get my information is because I'm a parent. So if I'm
Yes.
not a parent, I'm not going to be on the website.
Sure.
and we will use
get
that
the
parent
emails,
piece.
you know, from the district or from a particular school.
What do we call that, Meister? How do we communicate blast? I was school messenger where I came from. What
Yeah,
is
we have a
E-blast,
couple of different ways.
E-blast
but
or whatever.
E-blast.
Yeah, thank you. So we will do that with parents, you're absolutely right. And share all of this with parents, just educationally, and we'll utilize, so you're absolutely right, that is.
I remember one time they put sticky notes around the buildings.
Correct.
They did that to
Yeah.
show the uses,
Yeah,
yeah.
we need a boiler, you know, so
Yep.
parents come in and see it.
Sorry, you're presenting this on the 28th? Is there, I feel like.
I'm aiming for a half hour, an
Yeah.
hour,
That's
45 minutes.
fantastic, I feel like you're dialed in to what's happening with the district. This is a very important meeting. In the interest of education, is there anything we can put out socially that says, hey, you know, if you want to know about, you know,
That'd be a great.
these bills that are about to happen, like here, this is, we don't have,
Go on the 28th.
yeah, go on the 28th, watch on the 28th, send a link to how you can watch this, because you don't have to guess what's in and what's in it, what's not in it. It's coming straight from you at this presentation. It feels like it's more than just any other board meeting.
That's a really good point.
It is, but
Yeah.
it's impacting us.
Yeah.
So just so you know, the board meeting at 6:30, we are celebrating our all-state athletes, so that'll probably take, I don't know, a half hour or so, so probably right around 7, if people wanna, that's the very next thing on the agenda. And I think to your point, that we could certainly send, with this, a communication e-blast to at least to our parents.
Yeah,
And what is today, Wednesday, so I don't know. Social media, we can put it on Facebook, but that's a lot to our parents, that
yeah.
we can't get out of mail.
I don't know how that works. I just feel like, you know, in the interest of, people do want to be educated, and to hear it coming straight from you, I think is very important, whether that's recorded and put on a website or on the Facebook page, and, you know, this is what happened at the meeting, your part, people can watch it that way as well.
And if there's some kind of a snapshot that we can share, like I have a bunch of people on my street that are either out of the district for years and years or not in the district yet. So they're not gonna get a lot of the communication that would go, you know, and this time of year, I think parents are drowning in communication anyway. But, you know, just a quick snapshot that you could text to, like, we have a street text, I can send it out.
Like a video?
Just like a snapshot, you know,
Like narrative though, or video?
no, just a narrative,
Yeah. Alexa's working on it, actually,
Some
she
kind of
has it up, but yeah.
yeah, something that answers enough questions to.
Right. We have a brochure that's gonna be going out, but then also, Alexa, I know that you've been making I just learned what it's called on Instagram. I'm getting older, it's called a carousel. So FAQs out there too, so.
Yes.
Yeah, anything like that that isn't tied to
So,
it.
I'm gonna go to-
what you're talking about, like an infographic or infographics.
Yeah,
like
just
those,
something that
I think that'd be good.
people
So
that
if-
don't have kids in the district yet would, I could share with them as a neighbor versus something that comes to me from South or from the district or.
Can we distribute flyers in the schools to kids, to give their parents?
Yeah, as long as it's all strictly informational.
Right, information.
Best way.
What'd you say?
That's probably the best way.
A flyer?
Yeah, with the kid.
Will it make it home? Because I know with my kids, none of that made it home. Your kids must be young, because as they get older, unless you
Oh,
work
yeah.
at that big.
Comprehensive.
After the vote,
So you're
after the
still
vote
getting some.
happens, yeah.
Yeah.
Is there any information in what we're sharing with the community, statistics about deferred maintenance and how the costs compound?
Yeah, 8%.
Is that
yeah.
part of the, as anyone knows, if you put up, putting the roof on your house, right? You do it now, it's more.
Right.
Financially.
That's something I can ask Diane, but I think they said it's about 8%
Okay.
increase every year.
That's what it said in the 197 pager.
Well, right, wasn't that the last column was the adjusted price for inflation?
Yeah, for inflation, it's
Right.
on that
Yeah.
as well, so we can certainly try to address that in a succinct way.
So I see our esteemed Grosse Pointe News reporter Tuttle in the background there, and next to me, publisher of the Grosse Pointe News. And we had conversations with CAG and Grosse Pointe News.
No.
And Jeup. Did you do editorial work with
I'm just doing right. I've pulled out, you'd have to ask Ted.
you? Ted? That's it, you're it?
That's a decision for the publisher.
Boom, boom.
That's how pretty conversation.
Okay, so we would want to do.
For sure,
editorial
and
work.
I would hope that
Right.
all
Same
publications would provide us an opportunity to educate.
That'd be a key point and a key part of the process, since that's unpaid media.
And also, and I'm not saying any of us said that, but typically your aging population absolutely loves the paper in their hands. So,
And those are the voters.
yes, absolutely.
Can we put flyers up or some kind of placards at, I don't know what the corporation is, but the libraries, the
We
public
can do
libraries?
all of it, as long as it's just educational.
Educational.
Not telling how to vote.
What, exactly, you can't say how to vote.
Right, I understand that, but
Yeah, we can do
there's a lot of, I mean, maybe people who don't necessarily have kids or aren't in the schools regularly, they're still going to the library or to the city halls, or, it seems to me anywhere we can get them up, maybe we should.
If restaurants have
Parks,
but I don't think anyone does those placemats anymore, but I remember years ago, we put stuff
Oh,
on
yeah.
placemats at diners that had information.
Are we able to, with park season getting active, are
Parks
we
is a good
able
idea.
to have at the gates here, do you know that?
I don't think that would be a great idea. The schools are separate from
Okay.
the city, yeah, yes.
You can go around baseball games and stuff like
You all are.
I was thinking places where the people are in the summer, because they're not gonna be in the schools. in the
And
summer.
honestly, my experience is parents with young kids are so overwhelmed with life that they don't really know what's
Right.
going on. So, but they're the ones who really are impacted. If you have a really young kid, you're gonna get these benefits for many years. So,
And
we always
also
try
at the parks, it's downtime.
Sure.
They should be able to come in and just enjoy and not really have to think about,
Sure.
you know what I'm saying?
Yep.
I think what you all are doing is fantastic, especially with the videos and the report, the larger report, those pictures are excellent. Because I said to Catherine Sowerberry, I was trying to imagine why, because I get it. I don't have children in this district. I don't have children, period, but I get it. Aging structure, so those pictures would really sell.
Uh-huh. I did some volunteer work at some different schools around town that have been deferred maintenance on Osborne High School. And walking around that, we didn't have the money to keep their aging buildings, up. And that was quite an eye opener. Like,
Yeah.
if we don't do
Do
our,
not
do our job, that's
Yep.
gonna be us.
And the report made it very clear, if you didn't read it, if we do nothing, it's only gonna get worse.
So one more question, it would be great to have a theme to wrap around this effort. I'm not gonna suggest one, but for Oakland
Here's
Community
hoping
College,
you would.
our theme was excellence empowered. So the idea was to continue the excellence that the community college was going through, so continuing through. I'm sure there's a theme somewhere that we can
I would welcome if you have ideas on that. I mean, bluntly, like I'm an educational leader, you're an expert on this. I play one on TV, but I would defer to experts in any help that we can get. And you certainly have a really great base. I know this is your expertise, so I'll sponge anything from you as possible. Others, unfortunately, I have to leave. We have another event at 5, so is there anything else I can answer before I leave?
Thank you for doing such a
Thank
great
you.
job.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. I appreciate all of you. You see claps very often, so I'll take it. Thanks.
Okay, let's move on to the branding update. As everyone knows, Roundtable 6 is the company we're using, and Chris,
Yeah.
Stanley, would you?
Yeah, not a major update at this time, but please know that we will have more in the coming months as we go along. Right now, we're just going through the attorney conversations as we go along with it. So we do have a contract that has been provided to them through the attorneys, and their attorneys are now taking a look at it as well too. But hoping to kick off fairly soon with that, and we'll have more information at the next meeting.
Awesome. Okay, 3-point community engagement survey update. So we had 2,692 responses. Thanks to all of you. So thank you for pushing that so hard.
Yeah, if I could just add to that too. So if you guys remember the last time we had this conversation, we shared, I think it was about 879 responses that we moved along with it. 2,692, all because of your efforts. So all of you, whether it was suggestions that you were making, whether it was a way that you've shared it with other people, we had 2,692 responses, which I really think was excellent. I want to be clear when we say responses, you didn't hear me say people, because there were opportunities due to your suggestions for people to take it more than once if they wanted to. So just as a reminder, for an example, I'll use me, right? So I am a staff member here, I'm also a parent here in the district, and I send my kids to 2 different schools here in the district. So I had the opportunity to take it 3 different times, but they were all different types of questions that helped kind of move along with that. So I took it as a staff member, as a parent of Monteith, and then also as a parent of ourselves too, to be able to give my perspective. So I thought that that was a really good opportunity. Some next steps that go along with that would be Hanover is currently analyzing all of this data that goes along with it. And they said mid-June they should be having the results out to us. So looking forward to sharing that with you. Happy to answer any questions that you might have with that.
So we don't know yet the breakdown, like, did we get a good number of community members who don't have kids that filled it out?
Actually, I can tell you that. But again, I'm going to go with responses rather than people.
Right,
Right?
responses of, yeah.
Give me 1 second. I have that answer.
I'm just
though.
curious because we talked
Yeah.
about that.
Yep. Yeah, it was a great number that was out there. I'm trying to talk while I'm looking this up, so bear with me. Anybody want to sing a song while I'm looking this up? Okay. So I have, what do I want to call this? A community member. So I think we were defining community member as somebody who currently lives in the district but does not send kids here, right? We had 337 responses that way, which I thought was a great number. parent of a current student, obviously that was the most. That was 1,307 responses that way. We had 566 students respond too, which I thought was great. Generally how that goes, and this was upon the recommendation of Hanover, I believe it was 5th grade and up. If you were an elementary school student, they didn't really collect that response because of the fact that it's really tough to kind of take a look at what that's going to look like overall. We can continue to have conversations with kids, but for the most part, kids at the elementary level are just love school. It kind of goes along. We did have 114 people that were alumni that responded too, so that was 4% of ours. And then I also had 79 people respond that were none of the above, so they could have been people from outside of the district.
How about people who send their kids to another school?
So that would be considered a community member, right? And so that kind of fell into that same pot too. So people that either have kids that are not of school age or people that have children that they send their kids to another school. That's all part of that same pot of 337 responses. So it's a good number. Thank you.
Okay, moving on. Any new business? I don't think so. Public comment? Hi.
I can foresee a question coming up relating to the millages as to what the logic was to increase the sinking fund and to increase the time period for voting as it relates to all we've been reading about for a long time regarding declining enrollment.
Good question.
Exactly the question.
And I would not be able to answer that question.
Well, would the answer be, people are wondering if you're going to close a building or consolidate? Is it?
Well, precisely, if you're going to be pouring money into every facility, where does declining enrollment fit into the whole scheme of things? Because everyone knows Trombley's been empty for a while, and Coupard has not been decided as to what its future is. And the administration building was empty for a while too.
Well, I mean, I'm guessing that they're gonna prioritize the buildings that are in use when they're using the funds. I mean, the funds don't, for sure. Even if it passes, it's not really enough money to cover all that is, according to the Plant Moran document, that's needed anyway, right? So they're still gonna have to prioritize the use of the money.
But I think the issue is declining enrollment.
Right.
And
Sure.
the article very clearly on the front page of the Grosse Pointe News a while back said Plant Moran continuing declining enrollment.
I had that question too. When I read the report, it screamed declining enrollment. And then you go through all the schools. And so I could see a lot of pushback with, is that really the solution to pour money into, the schools that, it's necessary if those schools are gonna stay open. But if you keep hearing declining enrollment, then how do you justify that? I don't know if justifying it by saying we have stately buildings, because everything changes over time. Everything, nothing stays the same. I wish there was Kmart still, I'm a Kmart child. And Jacobson's and so forth and so on. So we need to have a strong justification for that, to deal with the declining enrollment that we feel we can all live with. Because I'm a stately girl too, I love that, I love walking in all the schools and seeing really tradition. That's really great. And giving that value to our students and our teachers and other administrators.
Well, a part of the answer to that is a realtor too, we're landlocked. So, as far as building new buildings, so you don't want to give up some of those buildings, even if you're not using Trombley. Whether some of those might end up being trade schools or nursery schools or whatever. They're there and they need.
There's a minimal amount of upkeep they need, even if they're sitting empty.
Pardon?
There is a minimal amount of upkeep they need, even if they're sitting empty,
Right,
so.
right.
The built, South needs the same maintenance, whether it has full capacity, whether it's operating at full capacity or not. Building, right? I think that's something though for the administration to keep in mind when they're prioritizing, if they're gonna go through and prioritize the use of those funds, they obviously they need to keep that in mind. Which buildings get the most money based on enrollment and use.
And not investing in our schools and buildings like that is not going to increase enrollment.
Right, because we need the schools either way,
Right.
whether they're operating full capacity or not, they're.
We might end up with universal pre-K someday, I mean, we can think futuristic too. We might.
And
Yeah,
just
kids
speaking
my
with, and I know Ben Madison doesn't come to these meetings, but I know we had mentioned Ben Madison earlier. He's our director of facilities that are out there. He can just list off the top of his head all of the different items that are out there. And for example, one of the ones that I know just recently came to the board was that of Tuck Point. And I know if you live here in the Points community, there's some point that you are going to have to be paying for Tuck Point when it's out there, and that's not cheap. And if you want it to look a specific way, having to pay for that sort of thing just certainly has a cost to it. Those aren't the fun things that you ever want to pay for, but you got to do it if you want to continue to upkeep our buildings. And I apologize, I know that's not an answer to the questions that were out there. I have written those questions down, but it's just something I was thinking about.
It's a very good question, though, and it's part of the whole equation.
Any other comments? Board member comments?
I'll just add in kind of relation to that, I think the district should probably think about that question and come up with a
Yeah,
good
for
response.
sure.
Because I live in the Trombley district, and we passed a bond, and a lot of that money was supposed to fix Trombley, and then the district closed Trombley.
Right.
So,
And that was a huge issue,
personally-
that was a huge issue.
right,
within the
I have a lot
community.
of neighbors who are upset about that, and their question would be similar to what was shared. Okay, you want to have all this money, we're gonna triple our investment, if you will, as residents. What kind of guarantees do we have? And there are no guarantees, and I understand that, and I understand, well, we obviously have to invest in the buildings or there won't be buildings, but I think it's prudent to get ahead of that question, because there are people who are gonna say, you want all this money, are you gonna close more buildings?
Of course.
And yes, I agree that you're asking for less than you truly need, so that's important to share too, but, it happened, right? We raised money, passed a bond, and two of the buildings that we raised money for
Sure.
subsequently closed, so
Understood.
that's gonna come up.
I think people are wondering about the budget for next year, because if that's explaining, the treasurer really, enrollment's down, you have less teachers, you have less this and that, and I think that needs to be explained real well for the community too, where we can save money or,
Yeah, and we'll have the budget out at the first meeting in June to be voted on in the second meeting in June. And what's nice is we did beat enrollment projections for last year, and the hope is that that trend continues to go that way.
That's a good,
It's fantastic.
good piece of information to share right there, right?
Great selling.
All right, anybody else? Okay, meeting adjourned.
Thank you.